Okay, the word for today is basically, there you go, technical difficulties. Let's see what we got here. The word for the day today is a harsh one, depending on which side of the fence you're on. Basically, Jesus came, and to give you a small background, there were people called Pharisees. They were a religious sect that, very astutely followed the law, the Ten Commandments laid down by Moses in Deuteronomy, but they also laid other things on top of them. But then Jesus began to speak to them. If you turn to Matthew chapter 23, then Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you, observe and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not." In other words, he said, what they're telling you is great. They're telling you, love the Lord your God with all their heart, but they weren't doing that. So he's like, listen to everything they say and do what they say, but the things they do, don't do, because they lay heavy burdens on others and they don't move them with one finger. And these are the people, if you remember, that rallied to have him crucified. They were the ones saying, give us Barabbas, kill Jesus. And if you go on to look here, you'll see where he says, woe unto the scribes and Pharisees. And he gives them a whole bunch of woes, later on. For they bind heavy burdens to bear and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves don't do one thing. They won't move them with one finger, but all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad and enlarge their borders and their garments. They love the best places in the feasts and the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplace, and to be called Rabbi, Rabbi. They loved it when they're walking down the street and they had the robes on and someone walked by, Rabbi, Rabbi, teacher, teacher. They just gloated in it. But then they see Jesus healing someone and they're like, what are you doing healing on the Sabbath? And they just got so jealous because he was taking away some of their attention and their glory. And then he outright laid it out. Brood of vipers. Do not call anyone on earth your father. What do you mean? Jesus said that? Wow, there's a whole religious group that says, call this man father. Pray to him father. No, Jesus said one man on earth is your father, and that's God. Do not call anyone earth father, for one is your Father who is in heaven. And do not be called teachers, for one is your teacher, that's the Christ, Jesus. He's the ultimate teacher. To his disciples, to those who would follow him, he is the greatest teacher. A lot of people like being teachers. Today you have billion-dollar booksellers up there filling auditoriums. They love to get up in front of churches and auditoriums of people and lay it all out. And that's good, and it's necessary because God has given some people the gift to do that. But Jesus said, don't become many teachers, for you'll receive the greater condemnation. For to whom much is given, much is required. You got a whole bunch of knowledge, they're going to require more from you. If a math teacher sits there and spends 4 weeks teaching you calculus and subtraction and addition and everything, at the end of the course, they're going to say, all right, redo those formulas. You can't go to them and say, I don't have a clue. They're like, no, I put this all in you. Where's the answers? So if God puts all this stuff in your heart and gives you all this, and like some ministers have said, and it's interesting, because Jesus said they had it all, but they didn't practice it. He's like, love your neighbors yourself. They didn't do that. They wanted to kill him and other people. So it's not so much to know these things, but to do them. So this is sort of a dangerous word almost. If you think about it, if God gives you all this information and all this knowledge and you don't impart it to other people, you're held accountable for it. Like the message last church and Sunday, hey, we need volunteers. Our church is growing, huge, phenomenal, big-time church. We need parking lot attendants. We need babysitters. We need worship leaders. There's only a few people that can get up there and publicly speak because churches have the funnel like this. You got to pass many background checks to get in there. Background checks, by what I mean by that is go to college, become an ordained minister, meet all the prerequisites of the church board, but then there's some people, itinerant preachers like Jesus. He did not attend one college, probably. They're like, who are you? Where do you get your authority? You came into our synagogue. And I'm not just talking a church on Main Street, Atlanta, Or over here, Jesus Christ went into the temple built by Herod, and he started knocking over tables and letting the birds go free. Why? Because he's like, my Father's house is a house of prayer. You made it a den of thieves. In other words, hey, give us 20 denarii. We bought this bird for 2 cents. You give us 20 denarii, and then you could go sacrifice to God. And he's like, man, you people are ripping people off and scamming them. So he goes and he flips over the tables, he flips over this, and the Pharisees had had enough at that point. They're like, by what authority are you doing this? Where's your degree, Jesus? Who ordained you a minister, Jesus? Of course, you and I know the inside scoop. He was the Son of God. And he said, okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Before I tell you where I get my authority to preach, I'm going to ask you a question. John the Baptist, was his teachings from men, or was it actually something from God? They freaked out at this. Why? They were trapped in 2 ways. Number one, they realized that all the people around him held John the Baptist as a prophet. So if they say, he was a prophet, he came from God, then Jesus could say, why didn't you believe him? And if they say he's from men, then all the people would say, Pharisees, we know that guy was a prophet of God. We're out there getting baptized by the droves by this guy. But they looked at Jesus, they said, we're not going to tell you. We don't know where John the Baptist, and he said, neither am I going to tell you. And of course, we know the sad part of the story. Later, he rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, and people are worshiping. They're like, cut that out. And later, they crucified him. And he was telling them, if you go on to read in this chapter, that he said all the blood of the prophets killed and stoned would be on that generation's head. Talk to you later.